Okay, hello everyone. Welcome. Welcome to this event. I am very excited to meet you all here. My name is Nazanin Hossein Kha. I am the Director of Special Projects here at Vielight. I will be your host today. I will start with a few quick housekeeping notes. Then I'm going to share an announcement about an upcoming meditation event, which is very exciting for all of us. And after that, we will dive into today's exciting webinar on meditation and altered state with pulse photobiomodulation given by Dr. Sanjay Manchandra. So first of all, for the housekeeping rules, this webinar is being recorded. You will receive access to the recording afterwards. Please keep your microphones muted throughout the sessions. And if you have any questions, please kindly post them on the chat. And I will be the host and I will work with Sanjay to get your questions answered, depending on how the flow goes in the middle or maybe at the end at the QA session. So, about the announcement, and I hope that you do see our NOMS uh, poster in your screen. So, this is the event that we are throwing. Vielight is hosting this event. So, it is the Neuroscience of Meditation Summit, NOMS 2025. It is a one-day event on October 24th, 2025 at the University of Toronto, Schwartz Reisman Innovation Campus. It will bring together scientists, meditation practitioners, and neurotechnology experts to explore how meditation affects the brain and how tools like transcranial photobiomodulation can enhance meditative states. Attendees can expect sessions on neuroscience research, on light-based brain stimulation, and guided meditations using Vielight technology. This event is aimed at researchers, mental health professionals, integrative practitioners, and anyone interested in consciousness and brain health. So spots are limited. The event is in person, but we do also have virtual registration for the event that I'm going to pass on the links for you here. So if you are interested to register in person, if you are in Toronto on October 24th, or you can attend the webinar virtually. We would be more than happy to see everyone there. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Sanjay Manchandra. He is an expert in neurotechnology, meditation, and integrative wellness. Originally trained as an electrical engineer and computer scientist, he left his role as a university professor in response to an inner calling to study the mind and consciousness. For over 30 years, he has combined scientific rigor with deep training in meditative and spiritual traditions and in various mind and body based psychotherapies. As a clinician and educator, Dr. Manchanda specializes in psycho-spiritual integration, neurofeedback, brain stimulation, and photobiomodulation. He works with individuals to achieve peak cognitive performance, support recovery from brain injury, enhance mood, and access deeper meditative states and self-transformation, drawing on both advanced technology and holistic methods. Dr. Manchanda has presented his research at leading conferences on consciousness and technology and teaches at several universities, including the California Institute of Integral Studies and the California Institute of Human Science. Our Neuro Pro 2 device, which is Vielight's state-of-the-art device, houses a meditation protocol from Dr. Sanjay Manchandra that I am also using pretty much on a daily basis. And I'm very happy and grateful for that meditation protocol that we have in the Neuro Pro 2 device. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Sanjay Manchanda.
Thank you, Naz. Hi, everyone. Great to be here with all of you. And I'm going to share a little presentation and talk a little informally with all of you as well. And while I'm speaking, feel free to type in questions into the chat, and we'll pause at various times to address your questions and comments. So let me share my presentation. All right. So supporting meditation with photobiomodulation. And initially we started with experienced meditators, and now we are going to be looking at, beginning meditators and all kinds at meditators at all levels. And I'm going to start by just talking about photobiomodulation, a couple of basics, and then move into talking about how we could support meditation with photobiomodulation. So if we look at just the basic effects of infrared light on physiology in the brain, there's many beneficial effects. A primary effect is when the light and is absorbed by an enzyme called cytochrome C oxidase here at the bottom of the picture, and it helps it to donate an electron and create ATP inside the mitochondria in our cells, which are the energy factories. So basically, in somewhat similar to photosynthesis, the certain frequencies of infrared light actually don't create food, but they act like food. So they create energy in the cell. And they also create some beneficial signaling through some reactive oxygen species, which in small amounts are beneficial and lead to several benefits for our body. And and so that's one of the things, main reasons we use infrared light for physiological repair, recovery, and for the brain to keep the brain younger, and so on. Another way that infrared light works is that it works through its effects on structured water in the cells. And I'm going to say a little bit about that as well. So in Pollack's work, this amazing work, he talks about exclusion zone water inside our cells. And it turns out that when you have water that touches a strongly hydrophilic surface, which means you like a fatty surface, you know, and basically the first 100, no, sorry, a surface that attracts water, then they basically several hundred micrometers next to that surface reorders itself into a quasi-crystalline form. And this layer is cleaner than regular water. It excludes certain solutions, things that can be solutes that can be dissolved in it. And it like a microscopic bead, so how water beads up on certain surfaces, it's like that. And this kind of water carries a negative charge close to the surface, and the water next to it carries a positive charge. So it becomes like a battery. And this kind of water in our cells, which is like a little battery, absorbs infrared light and near ultraviolet light. And this absorption then expands it. So it's like a little battery circuit that gets charged with light. This is a light, infrared light bioelectric effect that happens in our body. So part of the way that infrared light works beneficially in our system is through this bioelectric effect in our body. And so it acts like so this water is like an infrared antenna, and certain frequencies of infrared light are very actively absorbed by the water. It charges up this battery in the cell, which then donates an electron inside the mitochondria, and it activates the cycle of the energy cycle in the mitochondria and pumps it up. So not only is it directly absorbed by cytochrome C oxidase, it's absorbed by water, which then produces an electrical charge, which also donates electrons. So we get these double effects. Not only that, what it does is to actually activate ion gated channels on the surface of the cell, on the cell membrane. And they're close to these water layers. And even a small change in light and temperature was enough to open up these gates, and certain minerals like calcium and sodium flood the cell. And it's like getting a shot of electricity into the cell, and it charges it up and activates the activity in the cell. So we're basically you're feeding light into the cells and activating more energy in the cell, which has many beneficial effects. One of the things that happens is that nitric oxide is produced in the activities of the cell, and it binds the hemoglobin, copper, and iron receptors. And this nitric oxide then gets released, which is beneficial for the cell because it gets replaced by oxygen, which then continues the process of burning food with oxygen to produce more energy. And the nitric oxide goes into the bloodstream, which is beneficial for the bloodstream and increases blood flow. So there's many beneficial effects of photobiomodulation, such as increased blood flow, reduced inflammation, reduced cell death, increased neurogenesis and synaptogenesis, reduced neurotoxicity, and so on. Okay, so there's some basics on infrared light, why we like using it, and it's beneficial for all parts of the body, and so that's why we use it for the brain. But what we really want to talk about here is pulsing it, and for pulsing it also for psychospiritual reasons, for changing state. So some basics again, what happens when you pulse the light? So you can just shine light and it's beneficial. And then when you pulse it, something else can happen as well. So that adds another effect on top of the regular benefits of infrared light. Well, we're familiar with the idea of pulsing and brainwave entrainment from the idea of light being flashed in the eyes at certain rates. Then, when you do that, it affects the brainwaves in some relationship to the flash frequency. When you listen to music at a certain beat, the brainwaves are affected by the rhythm of the music. And so then the question we can ask is what happens when you flash infrared light directly on the skull? And infrared light is being absorbed through the skull in a small amount, but enough to really affect the brain. And now we're thinking about pulsing it. Well, one thing you can think about is you get resonance effects when you pulse the light. So I talked about how the ion gated channels in cells are activated by light. So when you pulse the light, it turns on and off. When you turn it on, it activates the cell. When you turn it off, it deactivates the cell. When you turn it on, it activates the cell. When you turn it off, it deactivates the cell. So you get this, you can get resonant effects inside the cells depending on the natural resonance of frequencies of the ion gated channels opening and closing repeatedly. So each pulse briefly overpolarizes the mitochondrial membranes. It raises the ATP and provides a controlled influx of calcium ions. And then when the pulse is off, the cell can relax. So the cell is being activated, but it's useful for it to also relax. And when you pulse, it's not always on. The light is not always on. So you have this activation and relaxation cycle, which is beneficial. And there's, several studies, petri dish studies, mice studies. For example, one study talks about how 10 hertz or 100 hertz is better for neuroprotection in mice than a continuous shining light. And there was a study on which showed that 300 hertz was good for mitochondrial function in dental pulp stem cells in a petri dish. And there's other studies. So what we're looking at here is that many ion channels, many cortical rhythms, many blood cycles, hemodynamic cycles sit in a 1 to 100 hertz range. That is, there's a natural cycling in the body that's always happening of activation and deactivation, opening and closing. And if we match it with pulsing light, we get some powerful resonant effects that we can then harness for our purposes. So Vielight did a nice study on just pulsing the infrared light of the Vielight Neuro, which is a 810 nanometer headset that Lawrence is wearing right now. I can see, and And they showed that when you pulse light at 40 hertz, the neurogamma, that it boosted alpha, beta, and gamma and reorganized the network synchrony in the brain. So this was a double-blind EEG study. This is the paper that pulsed near-infrared transcranial and intranasal photobiomodulation significantly modulates neural oscillations. So basically, this graph shows that this kind of pulsing increased power in the alpha and other bands. Wait, what happened here? Sorry. Okay, we are back. All right. And so yeah, so the basically what I'm saying is that if you pulse the light, you get these positive effects or negative, or you get these clear effects. It doesn't do nothing. For example, here we're getting an increase in the EEG bands in alpha, beta, and gamma, and a change in the synchrony as well. Okay. All right. Here's another study by Matthew et al. Showing real-time EEG response to pulse transcranial photobiomodulation with a pulse laser at the right prefrontal cortex. If you pulse a laser at the right forehead, they showed that a 1064 nanometer laser at 40 hertz, 40 times a second pulse, showed a consistent enhancement in the gamma and the beta bands. These are the high frequency bands of EEG. Similarly, 808 nanometer pulses, slightly different frequency of light, but at 40 hertz again, produce the most increase in alpha. And finally, in terms of pulsing, there's this study from Sai's lab at MIT that showed that even pulsing visual light, just regular light of cages of mice who were bred to have Alzheimer's, was highly beneficial. And it was 40 hertz. There's something special about 40 hertz. And it's like almost like an anti-inflammation frequency. But to be more accurate, the study showed that it activated microglial activity in the brain, and microglia, one of their functions is to do garbage collection in the brain. So it actually decreased the level of plaque accumulation in these mice that were bred to have Alzheimer's. So if you flash the light in your room at 40 hertz, it's beneficial for your brain. And they also showed that if you listen to 40 hertz tones, that's also beneficial for the brain. It increases garbage collection and decreases plaque in the brain. So this is a great study, and they have some research showing that this kind of flashing of 40 hertz can improve cognition and memory, prevent neurodegeneration. The effects are mild, but they're definitely there, and reduce buildup of proteins, that is, toxic proteins, and stimulate the brain's glymphatic system, the lymph in the brain, to clear buildup of toxicity. So it supports the natural activity of the brain to clean out the brain. And now, of course, what happens is that if you add the power of infrared light to the pulsing of 40 hertz, then we get a whole new level of clearing in the brain. And that's what that's what, the community has been researching for beneficial effects on the brain, and including studies that are going on for, you know, cognitive decline and dementia as to be treated by the infrared light. So here's a couple of slides on slices of the brain of mice showing the positive changes that happen with stimulation at 40 hertz. In this case, audio and visual stimulation, not infrared stimulation. And so there's a decrease in the red tau and tangles, and an increase in beneficial green activity of the microglia. So now we're going to talk about transcranial photobiomodulation, which is photobiomodulation across the cranium for meditation. Let me pause here for a minute. Any questions so far, Naz, that people have posted?
Not too many. I would
Okay.
encourage everyone to post their questions on the chat if you have any.
Okay, great.
Nothing so far.
Okay, great. All right. So we've been talking about all these beneficial physiological effects of light and of pulsing the light. And we particularly like frequencies like 10 and 40 hertz for beneficial effects on the brain. So this has been around for a while. I've been using. I'm a neurofeedback practitioner and a brain stimulation practitioner in private practice. So I was using Vielight devices for a long time, even well before this research was in its infancy, because I could see beneficial effects, possibilities, and found them to be clinically useful. Another great thing about infrared light is it's non-invasive. It is no real medical side effects. So I could start using it right away in my practice with people. But I'm also a meditation teacher, spiritual teacher, and interested in changing brain states for therapeutic and spiritual purposes. So I was playing around with high frequency stimulation of the brain using current and magnetism, and finding some interesting effects, and also training, doing biofeedback training of the brain at various frequencies to see what happened. What happens if you increase, like try to increase 40 hertz in the brain, or 10 hertz, or 12 hertz, or 5 hertz, or, we study the effects of different frequency focus on the brain. And when we're doing biofeedback, in order to help the brain to change state, to improve attention, and to improve cognitive function, and so on, reduce anxiety, and so on. And so I was got interested in trying to use light for that purpose, and just flashing the light is very non-invasive. It's not like putting a current into the brain. And I found that it was particularly useful to play around with high frequencies. So I'm going to talk about that. So we know that meditation practices influence the neural dynamics in the brain, and you can see changes in the brainwave patterns in the various bands, such as alpha, theta, beta, and gamma. We also know that we can actually try to change the dynamics directly, and then try to change state in the brain. So that's you get you can buy a number of devices that use audio and visual tones, and binaural beats, etc., to help you to change state. And also we use biofeedback at various bands. So we try to have you play a game in which you increase the power in a certain EEG band of the brain to help you to change state and improve attention. So the question for me was, what frequencies do I want to play with in terms of flashing light into the brain, and what effects they might have? Okay, so what happens if I flash 20 hertz into the brain, or 40 hertz, or 100 hertz? Are we going to help to change state? Are we going to change the neural dynamics? And we would expect that we would change it given the things we've talked about so far. And so I'm not going to go into any detail here. Most people know this. Various frequency bands in the brain are correlated with various kinds of states in the brain. Delta for sleep, and theta for creativity, dreaming, even higher performance at certain parts of the brain for memory. Low beta for physical coordination and steadiness. Beta for thinking and focus, and gamma for higher level cognitive processing, peak performance, heightened awareness, and stronger sensory perception. Basically, if we look at various bands, we find that, on just as a very generalization, as you go from the low to high frequency concentration, so the brain has all the frequencies. It's like a symphony of different notes. But as you increase the one kind of note in the brain, then it has certain effects. So the low notes are the delta theta notes, for example. As you have more delta and theta in the brain, your focus drops. Your focus gets internalized. It goes into the body. Your state gets more relaxed. You may get more peaceful. You may have more emotions come up. As the level of mid frequency increases in the brain, in the symphony in the brain, as you get more of the middle frequencies, then you have a more balanced focus, a more medium level of energy, a more medium level of body awareness, and some alertness, and a neutral mood. As you go into the focus, as you increase the higher frequency power in the brain, then your focus gets more externalized, your energy level goes up, your body awareness drops. It's like when you're thinking and working, you have more of these beta frequencies, and you're less focused on the body. You're in a more activated state. And then you could go even higher. So this is what I was saying. As frequency goes up, just in general, energy goes up, body awareness goes down, arousal goes up, and focus goes up. Yes, actually, I will answer. Biswajit, you raised your hand. Let's talk.
Yes, hello sir, myself Biswajit Das, and I
Yeah.
am from India.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's first time I am joining in a photobiomodulation based meeting. So I have few questions like you are saying about the frequency that 20 hertz, 40 hertz, 100 hertz. So if I try to compare the effect of frequency on a subject, so can I give stimulation of different frequencies on one subject and analyze the frequencies?
Yes. Yeah. That's you'll see. That's what we're doing here. Yeah. So 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 what I was saying here was that the effect of lower frequencies is more calming and body based. The higher frequencies is more activating and less body based. And we're going to look at somehow balancing these effects, because meditation is a balanced state of opposite kind of effects. So you can think of mindfulness as a balance of calmness and energy, of equanimity and joy, and of concentration and investigation. The right side is more activating and the left side is more calming. So when you meditate, you become calm, but you need a certain level of energy, otherwise you're going to fall asleep or go unconscious. You develop equanimity. You develop this even-mindedness, equanimity, even-mindedness about your experience. But you also start to often feel happy, joyful, and blissful in the body. But you don't want to get too attached to that, and it'll lead you into agitation. You have to sort of let it be and not hold on to it. And you try to focus and concentrate on a certain object in your meditation, but you may also start to investigate your experience, and the investigation is more agitating than just focusing. So there's this kind of balanced action going on of opposing factors in meditation, and you'll see that it's related to frequency as well. So when we talk about meditation and EEG patterns, it turns out that depends on what meditation you're talking about. It gets a little complicated. Different meditations have different effects on the brain, and I'm not going to go into this in detail, but on one side we have various meditations, on the other side we have some very approximate summary of its effects on various EEG bands. So we're going to look at, okay, well, what kind of meditation are you wanting to support, or what kind of stimulation do you want to do on the brain? And so this is like a wide open question. And what I decided to do in this particular case was to try to try to activate the gamma activity in the brain. That was one primary purpose, and I'll tell you why right now. So so in the past, when research in biofeedback was happening, the first thing that was discovered was alpha training. That there's this band called alpha in EEG. This was in the 60s, and there's somehow you get into a relaxed state and alpha seems to go up. That's pretty reliable. Also, if you close your eyes, alpha goes up. Because alpha is like a posterior dominant rhythm, and your when you close your eyes, your occipital lobe that does visual processing is deactivated, and you get into this idle rhythm in the brain, which is alpha, and the alpha power goes up. So then there was this idea that meditation is associated with and relaxation, actually in this case, not so much even meditation, is associated with alpha, which makes sense. And then there was this work on theta for meditation, that alpha and then theta is important for meditation. But gamma was not really looked at, which is a much higher frequencies. Gamma is, frequencies like 40 hertz and above. And part of the reason they were not looked at is they were hard to measure. They get filtered out from the skull. When you put an electrode on the skull, you can't measure gamma very well. But it turns out that gamma is very important in for higher brain activity, for higher cognitive functioning, and for meditative functioning. So so more research started to come out on that. So here's an example of a paper which talks about increased gamma brainwave amplitude compared to control in different meditation traditions. And this particular same paper here, it looked at 64 adults which were experienced in different kinds of meditations. For example, vipassana, certain kind of mindfulness meditation, a Himalayan yoga mantra, and Ishya Shunya, which is an open awareness meditation. And they had a lot of 5,000 to 10,000 hours of practice. And they looked at high frequencies from 60 to 110 hertz. And they showed that all of these three groups showed significantly higher gamma in the parieto occipital region, particularly on the right. So the parieto occipital region at the back of the brain. And it showed that relative to the control group, they just had naturally high gamma in the resting state, and it went up more in the meditation state. And it was proportional to how long they had been meditating. So there was a relationship of the level of gamma in their brains to their experience. Here's another study by Lutz et al. Talking about long-term meditators inducing a high amplitude gamma synchrony during mental practice. So they were producing these high frequency waves synchronized across the brain. And they showed that also that meditators had naturally high gamma activity compared to, so they had a higher proportion of high frequency compared to low frequency activity in their brain. And particularly across in this case, the frontoparietal leads. So and especially on the right. So it wasn't just the back, it wasn't the back totally, but it was the front and back combined. And they showed that you could produce this synchronized activity of gamma across the brain. So earlier studies had shown synchronized alpha, so in some kinds of meditation, synchronized theta, and now these studies are talking about synchronized gamma. So there's something about synchronized bands across the brain in meditation that's important as well. Okay, so we have long-term practitioners showing elevated resting gamma power over the parietal occipital midline, and then gamma power rising above the meditator's baseline, as well as we have gamma being higher at the frontal parietal in certain traditions. Let's see here. And certain kinds of meditations bring up more gamma, like open monitoring, non-referential compassion meditations, or jhana meditations, which are these deeper states of concentration and absorption. And if when you did a simple practice like just counting the breath, then the gamma didn't go up. And typically long-term meditators don't do these simple practices. Another point is that gamma and theta are coupled. So earlier studies talked about alpha and theta going up in meditation. So they were not wrong. Turns out that gamma is nested inside the theta. So a theta is like a big wave, and gamma is like a short waves, and they can ride on top of these longer waves. So that's how, for example, like a AM radio works, is that the higher the information rides on these long waves. So similarly, that's how it is with gamma, is these short waves riding on top of these bigger, on the crests of these bigger theta waves. I should have had an image here of that. I don't think I do, but I hope you get the idea. So I'm not going to go into real detail here, but there's some real excellent work on this, talking about this combination of phase, theta phase, and gamma amplitude coupling in the brain for various purposes. So there's this synchronization that happens. And basically, the idea is that, let me see. Yeah. Basically, the idea is that the the theta waves connect the front and the back, and then these gamma waves are like little pulses that ride on them, that actually they provide a gating activity for the um, actual actual sense of self to arise in the brain. The other reason that I decided to look at these higher frequencies is because of psychedelics. Psychedelics actually can increase higher frequencies in the brain, but they activate the 5-HT2A receptors, the serotonin receptors, and promote high frequency firing. And then what happens is the regular alpha beta frequencies in the brain drop, their power drops. The regular thinking activity of the brain drops out, and then the actual sensory activity goes up. So if you're in psychedelic trip, you have this very high sensory fidelity. Everything is sharp, the music is loud, colors are sharp, your regular thinking mind is suppressed, and sensory gating actually happens in gamma. So gamma is, for example, when you have seeing visuals and in your mind, gamma activity is high at that moment in the visual cortex. So stronger posterior gamma bursts have been shown in these studies to have be correlated with higher ratings of visual complexity and the experience of unity. And especially in certain psychedelics like DMT related to ayahuasca, bottom-up sensory signals come up into the cortex. In something like mushrooms or psilocybin, it's more like a desynchronization that happens in the brain. And the gamma becomes unstable, which is correlated with ego dissolution. And we're interested in all of that in meditation, deep meditation practice. Okay, so intracranial recordings show high frequencies in the brain. You have to like literally take the skull out to actually measure high frequencies accurately. But here's the interesting thing. Even if I can't measure high frequencies very well and which makes it hard to do biofeedback, if I can measure it, hard to feed it back to the person as a game, I can stimulate the brain with this high frequency light and see if anything happens. And turns out that it does. So what we noticed was that when we started stimulate, so Vielight made this variable frequency device for us. This is like an initial prototype that we're working with, and this is a couple of meditation teachers we're working with, and uh, and we found that yeah, okay, stimulating 40 hertz and above showed increased self-observation and equanimity. Stimulating 80 hertz increased positive emotion, joy, feelings of expansion. 100 hertz and above, even more sense of expansion, and so on. So we could go at higher notes, almost like the idea of sound healing and sound frequencies. Like 432 hertz is the low A note frequency in sound, and we find that it's a beneficial effect in the brain when we pulse it through the medium of light and infrared light in this case. So here we are playing with this prototype with a couple of meditation teachers, Shinzen Young and Chuladasa. And you could also get some negative effects like agitation, dissociation, and hypomania, because it's can be highly stimulating in the system while simultaneously highly calming. So there's this need to balance these effects. So what we decided to do was explore with both low and high frequencies and combine them to produce a balanced state in the brain. And we found that when we did that, a lot of people started to report a sense of lightness, a clarity in their perception, similar to a mini psychedelic experience, and then a sense of peace and joy, a difficulty in thinking, a reduction in thinking. And so that's the kind of work that I've been following up with the infrared light stimulation at particularly at high frequencies, but balanced by low frequency stimulation. So I have this approximate idea that we can think of frequency as an index to states of mind or the experience of self. That the lower frequencies take you into the pre-personal, pre-rational realm. And we've used low frequency stimulation or biofeedback for the brain called alpha theta training to access old memories to support therapy and addiction recovery. So as you go into these low frequencies, you get into the body and old memories will come up and you can then do therapy more effectively. If you get into the stimulating more of the middle range, then you're more in the usual activity. Like right now, I'm talking and we're thinking, we're more in this mid range of the mind, intellect, and like a regular social functioning range. And when you get into these higher frequency states, then which actually ride on the lower frequencies, then you start to access more the spiritual, intuitive, superconscious, and transpersonal realms. So we did a study, which was a single-blind, prospective crossover study with 20 long-term meditators using a baseline EEG recording, an active session in which we used the Vielight Neuro Pro headset to stimulate the brain I'll show you at various frequencies, and then a sham session in which there was no stimulation, and we did a EEG recording as well as tried to evaluate their meditation state using a scale. So we did a pre and post EEG, we did meditation measures in this study. And we used the Vielight Neuro Pro 2. That's a device with all these different LEDs here, and all across the brain, and then one for each nose. And it uses an app, and you can program different frequencies into each LED. And what we decided to do was actually program the same frequency into all the LEDs. And the idea is to produce a synchronized frequency effect, because synchronization was important. And it's shown in research that the synchronization in the brain produces these simpler states of mind. A meditation states are actually simpler states. And when the brain's doing more complicated work, it actually desynchronizes it's both synchronized and desynchronized. But when you just go more into synchronization, you get into a simpler state. So this was a meditation protocol that we did some initial research on. We started stimulating at 1 hertz for 3 minutes and moved on to 5, 10, 40, 120, 200, 320, 432, 528, 720, and then 1024, all 3 minutes each. So it's like a ladder that just goes up in frequency. And total time 33 minutes. And people reported, basically 50% duty cycle. That means we don't need to get into the details of that. But, flashing at these various frequencies, but synchronized across the brain and the nose. And we used a questionnaire called the Mystical Experience Questionnaire, which is often used for psychedelic studies to try to evaluate how deep these experienced meditators went. And one reason for using experienced meditators was that this is a pilot study. I just wanted to show that it does something, and the experienced meditators would have more access to shifting their brain state. And so we wouldn't have to have them come back repeatedly to see if something was happening over time. So in this mystical experience state, it has different subscales of a subscale of mysticality, of transcendence of time and space, of positive mood, or the idea of ineffability or paradoxicality, a difficulty in describing an experience in words, something beyond usual concepts and words. So we can try to measure in this kind of a scale, are people having an experience of the transcendence of time and space? Is their mood improving? Are they having these ineffable experiences and mystical experiences in a deeper way? When the light stimulation is active as opposed to the sham stimulation. So this is shows some of the endpoints, the statistical endpoints of our study for the MEQ, the mystical experience scale. And on the left, you have the baseline condition, in the middle, the active, and then on the right, the sham. And you get this trend where you can see that the active condition shows higher scores of mysticality, in this case, of mysticality or positive mood or ineffability. In this case, they're all combined compared to a baseline and the sham. Is another way to. Here's the transcendence scale, which shows stronger, actually higher scores in transcendence. So the transcendence aspect was higher than the other subscales. So we have some idea that these higher frequencies help to stimulate transcendence. And when you're actually working with people, you can, and over time, I've talked to a lot of people where we're working with these higher frequencies, and they can, When we go to the higher frequencies, they start to talk more about feeling expanded and less connected to the body and more transcendent. So there's a distinct shift that happens. And there was a pretty good effect size showing that, this is a promising pilot study, and showed positive effects in transcendence and ineffability, particularly. Both of these were had stronger results. So there's something about this kind of stimulation that sort of taking us out of the usual realm of thinking and feeling. Here's some EEG analysis results, which showed that in the active condition, which is on the right side, we have uh, we have more beta in the frontal lobe, and we also have more gamma in the frontal lobe happening. Some limitations: most participants were not practicing the same technique, which would be a good idea for us to do. It's a very small group of people, 20. And another major issue in these studies is that different people have very different responses. And if you really want to see what you're doing, you need to look at each individual very carefully and see what happens to them at, say, 100 hertz or 10 hertz, not just like a whole series of frequencies. And what is the initial condition and what happens to them after you stimulate their brain. And you'll find that different people respond differently to the same frequency. So there are some average effects that we obviously showed here, but especially when you look at EEG, it gets very complicated quickly. We also find that there's sense need to individualize the treatment, in the sense that many meditators prefer certain frequencies in a certain range, and where they have optimum. It's like an elevator that takes them to a place where they can go. If you try to take them deeper, they may have some negative reaction to it or not be able to go there at all. So each person is like, you can think of it as a frequency elevator, and you want to take each person to the edge of where they can go, so then they can meditate and work there. And that level is different for different people. I'm going to pause here for a moment, and we can talk more about this as well. And how are you doing so far?
I got a couple of questions. I can
Okay.
ask them right now. One of them is from one of the participants. She is asking, so this would help with meditation. What about people who have hard time meditating due to monkey mind?
Yeah, exactly. So
Not
that
shut
would be
down.
our next study to do, but I am clear that this will help. I have actually now put the helmet on hundreds of people, including beginners, and a substantial number of them. Nothing works for everybody, and not right away, but a substantial number of people report, well, this just helped me to deepen. And I started using higher frequencies, 2000 hertz, 3000 hertz, with people, along with the lower ones, and I say, oh yeah, I just found it hard to think, or I feel more relaxed. I mean, for some people may just say relax because they're not used to reflecting on the experience of openness or emptiness or expansion, but they don't, well, it definitely did something. So what we want to do is to use it in a context of a meditation training system. That, okay, so let's say you want to practice mindfulness or you practice concentration, and then we use this protocol, and we even individualize it for you if possible. And then you notice, okay, when I use it and I do that practice, it's just much easier. That's what you're going to discover. It's just much easier to go deeper, to continue the practice, to learn the method, because it's going to shut down the monkey mind and give you a deeper experience that you're looking for. And we want to combine that so you have an understanding and a practice then you use to continue with along with the helmet. Yeah, so it'll definitely help in my experience, and we need to prove that. Yeah.
That is interesting. From the anecdotal feedback I got also, it seems that people who are meditating and using the device are locked in, so they can't easily come out of that meditation realm. So it is very interesting. Um,
Well, that's a problem. It just locks you in meditation. And actually, that's a very interesting point that you say, that there is a sense of being locked in to a certain state. And actually, some long-term meditators reported that as a problem. He said, "Okay, now you did this like 5,000 hertz with me, and now I went to this place, but now I feel locked in. Like I want to think about something else in this elevated state, and this is keeping me not able to think at all. Like I want to visualize something, and it's hard to visualize. I'm like, okay, we turn it off. It's like an elevator. You walk out the door. We're gonna take off the device."
That's very
You don't have to be
interesting.
so locked in, but it has a sense of being locking you in because of the way the frequencies are quite powerfully affecting your brain, and they're the same all over the brain. So it's like this simpler state, you know, that is going to put you in. And we could play with actually varying the frequencies very quickly once you get to a certain place to try to produce more freedom in the brain. That's actually something I've been thinking about. That's a whole next level thing.
Very exciting. Dr. Manchanda, I have another question regarding mystical questionnaire. Do you have the name of that mystical questionnaire in the PDF
Yes,
so
it's
that we
called the Mystical Experience Questionnaire, MEQ.
MEQ? So I
You
can
can
just
just search for it. Yeah. Mhm.
okay, that's excellent. Another question I have is one person says my husband has had two TBIs, traumatic brain injuries. One is in 1985 in Army, and the other one is in 2004. So he is disabled veteran with frontal lobe damage. Would this help with such an old injury?
So, the Vielight is not a medical device, so it's not approved for any treating any particular medical condition. It's sold as a wellness device. But basically, the reason I've been using it in my practice for so long and similar devices is because it supports brain functioning. So typically stops decline of functioning for aging when the brains are aging, and the aging can be dramatic if you have injuries from the past. So it can to stop the decline and improve the functioning. And so the chances are it will help to improve functioning of the frontal lobe. But one thing that I might suggest for that is actually to use more beta frequencies. So when I also do consulting for brain health. So if someone comes and tells me I have frontal lobe damage, then for example, or frontal lobe functioning difficulties. So you know what happens, you get older, you walk into a room and you forgot why you walked in. That kind of thing happens. Or you have more serious damage, like she's talking about. And then for that, I might recommend using beta frequencies. So instead of high gamma, which also we use because high gamma is part of the high functioning of the brain, we actually may start with beta and then do some gamma. And the beta is more like the range of 15 to 25 hertz or 12 to 25 hertz. And that's like regular everyday functioning frequencies. And we can stimulate the front of the brain with those frequencies to support, so then you get the effects of the light and the frequency to help the brain. And then we add in some of these higher frequencies, particularly 40 hertz to induce garbage collection in the brain, and then some meditation frequencies, and you'll find that the brain starts to wake up. But for something like that, I'll focus less on meditation and more on the beta frequencies initially. Because, in fact, here's another thing that we didn't talk about. Some of my students who use these devices and these high frequency protocols, and they meditate a lot and they investigate their self and their experience, they can get into these states where the thinking gets so shut down, they like find it harder to function. Then we start using the beta frequencies with them to get the brain back. so so too much meditation can have its own effects. That but there's a way that I've used this device and these frequency ideas to actually help my brain to be more functional, to be able to think better, as well as to go into these non-thinking states and create this flexibility in my system.
Very interesting. I have another question here. Have you found any correlation between people with psychedelic experience uh,
Oh yeah,
preferring?
definitely. So I think
Would they
it
prefer?
almost acts like a microdose of certain types of psychedelics that you get into these states, and I'm continuing to do more research on tuning the way I'm doing the frequencies for that kind of support. Yeah.
Yeah. So the
And you can
question.
also feel these effects. People report effects in the body, like body energy activation, like Kundalini activation, It may actually, doing a lot of high frequency work could bring up old memories to clear from your system, which is what happens if you do deep spiritual practice. It puts you in, and with psychedelic practice, it can really, help you to change your perspective, or, really investigate your own experience deeply. And the helmet is like a low fidelity way of doing that, but it definitely seems to do that. Yeah.
Interesting. Any correlation between low frequency or high frequency of these psychedelic experiences?
Well, if you look at most psychedelic experiences, the low frequencies actually are shown in the research to drop out. They actually decrease dramatically. And so sometimes even the high frequencies decrease dramatically. Depends on the substance. Like psilocybin, all the frequencies decrease. And in the DMT kinds of substances, the high frequency effects are stronger. They're there, more power. And but there is generally an overall activation in the system of high frequency. So there's definite relationship between a high frequency activation and psychedelic journey. Yeah, and it's a question of timing, and there's a little more sophisticated work that can be done on that. But that's definitely the case. Yeah.
That's very interesting. I know Helen had a question. Helen is a great friend of our community society, because we have a community, a Neuro Pro 2 community
Mm-hmm.
uh, for the device. Helen, do you want to come unmute yourself?
Sure. I'll try to make sense out of this question. Hello, thank you for doing this. All right, so do have a TBI. I have QEEGs, and my brain's kind of
Sure.
all over the place. So and by that I mean in the front, the orbital, the delta is low, blue. I don't know how to say it. I'm just going to use the colors
Yeah,
blue.
that's fine. Mhm.
Okay, and in the back, my parietal, the alpha and theta are high.
Okay.
Okay. My anterior cingulate also high, red, yellow, whatever. And my left frontal is also yellow red
Okay.
in
In
beta
the low
gamma, I
frequency.
think. No, in
In
the
gamma
high.
or low frequency?
No, the left is high in beta gamma.
Okay.
Okay. So I
Interesting.
had a TBI. Did I say that? I don't remember.
You
So
did. Yeah.
okay. See, so basically, I'm working on entrainment, and I'm working with Penny Jean Grace Fire on that.
Okay, great.
Also somebody else here in neurofeedback, but I don't do the neurofeedback, but we're working in other modalities like AVE, right? And so how would this, because I'm very interested in doing this. And a side note, I've said this in our community, with my traumatic brain injury, I have had some crazy God experiences. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely can happen.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it just blew my mind. So I really want to get immersed in this, but will it interfere with the entrainment aspect? Like, how would I work this in?
Well, what I suggest to people is to do the meditation, and now I have even what I call high frequency meditation protocols, which
Mhm.
which I could share with you. But to do something like that, start by doing it once a week, or maybe graduate to twice a week. So
Okay.
it's like the high frequency work takes you out of your mind, regular mind. But that's great. Like the
Hmm.
mind is like a meaning making system, which is, if you're able to take a meta step to step out of your usual system, then you can see yourself more clearly, and also
Okay.
change your sense of self can change, and you'll start to have more insight about yourself, and you can maybe do some deep therapeutic work that may come up to clear for you. So it will be very beneficial. But because you have difficulties thinking, you don't want to do too much of that, right? That it will actually make it harder to function in some ways.
Hmm.
So you just regulate it. You do it once or twice a week, and then do the other frequencies the other days. And that way you'll get a very balanced movement in your.
Okay. I have messed around with the nausea frequencies. They have knocked out migraines. So I've
Yeah,
gone up. I have gone up.
yeah, that's
Um,
awesome. Yeah, don't be afraid
yeah.
of it. Yeah,
Yeah. All
yeah,
right. So I'll mess around with that then. On the off
yeah,
days.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and you can report, what your subjective experience is. It's very
Yes.
interesting. Yeah. Hmm.
I'll report it through NAS on our
Yeah,
monthlies.
absolutely. Yeah. When I
Okay.
put people into 432 hertz or 1,000 hertz, there's a clear, consistent reporting that can happen on average. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
All righty. Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
You're welcome.
Alan.
Okay.
Shall we keep going, or do you want to keep move?
Well, I'm happy to take any other questions, and then we can finish up. Mhm.
There are a couple of more. So you mentioned about consulting work, Dr. Manchanda. If you can also give the website or the email address, I can send to everyone.
Yeah, I'll give you an email address. I don't even have a personal website. I should have one at some point. But here's my email address.
That's perfect. I will pass this on in the chat. I have another
Okay.
question. Perfect, thank you. I have another question saying that I used the meditation protocol once and got a headache. Recommend
Okay.
stopping, saying halfway through. He has long COVID brain, might have an effect here. He doesn't have any problems with alpha or gamma. Any recommendations here?
Yeah. Basically, the kinds of side effects you get from light stimulation, headache is number one, and the kind of side effect you can get from it. And that's because your brains, can't handle that particular level of light or frequency yet. And so I would just say reduce the time, and your brain will adjust to it. Typically, your brain can adjust within days to that. Mhm. So yeah, so basically stop the protocol at the point where you start to feel discomfort. That's what I would say, and then wait a couple of days and try it again, and yeah, as soon as you feel some discomfort, stop, and but then don't not do it. Just come back to it in a few days. Yeah. Mhm.
Excellent. Thank you. And I can see that Biswajit has his hands up. Would you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, Biswajit, go ahead.
Yes, sir. So I have a question. So if we increase the stimulation time like 30 minutes, so is there any chance of cell damage?
No real chance of damage. What happens is typically I tell people not to use the devices more than 30 minutes a day. I mean, normally we recommend 20 every other day is just an average recommendation, but of course people are different. And especially older people, you can use it longer because the brain is less metabolically active. It needs the light more. The older you are, the longer you can use it typically. And so, no real damage. What you're doing is you're increasing reactive oxygen species and too much. So you're going to feel kind of dull or get headaches, and you might want to take some more vitamin C, glutathione, and other antioxidants. So yeah, if you keep doing it, yes, you'll damage it just because you're overdoing it every day, every day, every day. But it's pretty hard to do. It's very safe technology. Mhm.
So, sir,
I also heard hydrogen water can also help with,
Yeah, hydrogen
yeah.
water is a powerful antioxidant, sophisticated intervention. Yeah. Uh-huh.
so are you using any LED based photobiomodulation device?
Yes, so the Neuro Pro 2 from Vielight that I showed you in the study is a LED-based photobiomodulation device. The LEDs are tuned to 8, 10 nanometers, and we have like how many of them? 12 or something?
Yes,
Mhm.
10
Yeah,
overhead, 2
yeah,
for the nose
right.
piece.
Yeah.
So, sir, as per your experience, LED based and laser based, which is better?
Well, that's a complicated question. I mean, lasers are more powerful, so they penetrate deeper, and but lots of studies show comparative effects of LEDs work really well, and they're much easier to use. They don't have any eye problems, eye safety problems. So on average, unless you are working in a clinic for home use, we don't want to use lasers. We want to use LEDs because they work really well. They work as well as lasers, maybe not identically well, because you could get away with having a lower power laser which penetrates deeper into the brain. So that would be better. But for home use, for it's just both cheaper, easier, and safer to use LEDs, and they work well. So. In a
Okay,
clinic,
sir.
yeah, you can use lasers better. Yeah. Mhm.
Last question, sir. When we are giving stimulation, how fast it starts to react in our brain internally?
Pretty instantly. Yeah. I mean, the subjective effects depends on the person, You may not notice anything until an hour later, or you may never notice anything if you're not very aware of yourself. But you can, the EEG effects will start right away. Yeah,
Okay. Thank you, sir.
you're welcome.
So we can move on and we can go ahead with the rest of the conversation.
Oh, I think we're pretty much done. Let's see if I want to share anything else. Okay. Where is, oh, here. Okay. All right. So part of my interest is in, higher states of concentration. In Buddhism, we have this idea, this technical term jhanas, for going these more simpler states of mind that also provide insight into the nature of self and reality. And we're finding some correspondence between going into these higher frequency states and these simpler states of mind called jhanas. So that's something that I have been wanting to explore and will be exploring in the future, as well as how do we optimize the frequency setting for each person. These are all open questions. Optimal frequency, optimal dosing, we don't want to have too many side effects. We don't want people to get too hyped up, and we don't want them to get headaches. And then what happens if you have differential settings between different parts? That I haven't really studied that. So right now I've been talking about synchronizing across the brain. But if we think about, for example, psychedelic use, then there's this idea of, I had this idea of like using a low frequency in the front and a high frequency at the back. And the low frequency in the front will shut down the front brain, which is the thinking brain, the executive brain, and so we'll should drop you into a more of a psychedelic experience. And it seems to do something like that. So that's another thing I've been exploring. And the other thing is to use a gamma theta coupling option. Now in the new Neuro Pro, the Neuro Pro 2, there's this idea of combining the theta and gamma because that's how the brain works. And that should lead to some interesting results. But again, we haven't really explored it yet. So you're welcome to buy a Neuro Pro 2 and join our photobiomodulation meditation community and my research group, and we can play around with this together.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I posted the event, the NOMS event in the chat again, if you're interested. I have one or two more questions for you,
Okay.
Dr.
All right.
Sanjay. So this will be okay for chronic migraine sufferers or brain
Yeah.
fog, with brain fog?
Yeah, absolutely. Should be just fine. Yeah. Mhm.
That's excellent. And then the other question I had is
I mean, it should help for sure. Yeah.
the other question is how does photobiomodulation differ from other brain stimulation techniques like TDCS or TMS in terms of safety and outcome?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. I didn't talk about that. I mean, I'm the TDCS expert. I use TDCS for 20 years in my practice. And um, they all have similarities because they're all adding some amount of energy to the brain, which is beneficial actually. When even current will add electrons to the brain and stimulate mitochondrial activity. It's just that the light does it better than that. And the other thing is that the light has a clearer frequency effect. When you add current into the brain at a different frequency, the variable resistances in the brain, the change the nature of the signal much more than when you flash light into it. Yeah, the light may not get through that as much, but it doesn't change the signal information being delivered to the brain in terms of frequency is cleaner and clearer. And so I've pretty much exclusively landed on using light for stimulation, and a lot of the effects that I was looking for with TDCS and TSCS, I'm getting from light. So that's currently become my preferred modality. While I used to do a lot of current and magnetism, I pretty much exclusively do light. It's also my interest now, so I'm a little biased, but there's a reason for it. Yeah.
Excellent. And one last question from me. I always wondered, what if I start with a high frequency? Like, what if I just
Yeah,
start
yeah.
studying?
We could, very well go the other way. You start at a high frequency and then you go low, and that might be better to integrate. Like you don't end up in this weird state. I feel a little stoned. Now I'm going to go try to work. That'll be hard to do. So why not end in a low frequency? So we've been exploring that as well.
Oh,
And
tremendous.
but typically maybe you should do both, like go high to low to high, and then from high to low. And so that would be the next meditation protocol we should play with. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much. Is there any other last minute questions from our audience? You can unmute yourself and ask the question if you have. If there is none, I will just go through the announcement that we have very quickly. Let me share my screen. So we have this upcoming event. We are hosting NOMS, Neuroscience of Meditation Summit, on October 24th, 2025 at University of Toronto Schwartz Reisman Innovation Campus. This is exciting for all of us. It is absolutely a teamwork. We had done so much to get to this point. You heard Dr. Sanjay's presentation about the amount of work that he experimented. We also experimented in-house at Vielight. We have results. We have a lot of team members and managers hosting this event. Dr. Sanjay Manchandra is also be attending this great summit. There are some limited spots available. If you would like to come in person, there is the link here. If you would like to join us virtually, please sign up as well. And with that, I would like to end this webinar. I really, truly appreciate this great conversation we had with you, Dr. Sanjay Manchanda. Wishing you all the best. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Das. Thank you, everyone, for your presence and contribution.
Have a good day.